management for family. We have two very distinguished speakers, some of the very best on this topic in Uganda, and we're privileged to have them with us. I'm going to read out their profiles very briefly, starting with Gloria Kambeda, CFA. Gloria Kambeda is the CEO, founder of Greenthorpe Capital Limited, a company that provides legacy protection solutions through its service offering that includes wills, trusts, trustee services, and related advisory services. Ms. Kambeda is a financial services professional with over 10 years of experience across insurance, pension, and asset management sectors. She has executive level experience in transforming and building organizations. Before she founded Greenthorpe Capital, Gloria Kambeda worked with UAP Old Mutual Group, one of the leading financial services groups in Uganda. There she served in various senior accounting capacities as UAP Life Insurance Head of Finance. Here she led debt and equity capital raising rounds and engaged with investment managers and strategic partners to assess and allocate investments. Ms. Kambeda is well versed in strategy implementation, operations management, and risk management. Ms. Kambeda is also a recognized business auditor. She spent 2 years as an audit associate at PricewaterhouseCoopers, working in financial services, oil and gas, and manufacturing industries. She holds a Master of Business Administration MBA from Edinburgh Business School, Harriet Wyatt University. She has a bachelor's degree in accounting and finance from Chambogo University and is a member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA UK. Ms. Kambeda is a chartered financial analyst as well. She's a CFA charter holder. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Alison as well as Gloria. I'm going to read Alison's profile next, very quickly. Alison Kukereza Serukaka is an advocate of the High Court of Uganda with over 8 years experience post-admission to the Ugandan bar. She is a governance professional with extensive in-house practice in corporate and commercial law and regulatory affairs obtained in the private sector. Ms. Kukereza has experience in the Uganda capital market sector, where she currently provides in-house legal advisory for Uganda's principal stock exchange, the Uganda Securities Exchange, with responsibility for overseeing compliance of the public listed companies and other market players through regulatory interpretation and enforcement. She also acts as an independent consultant on various compliance matters outside the securities markets sphere in collaboration with other independent legal consultants under Compliance Consults Limited. Prior to joining the capital markets industry, Ms. Kukereza was a senior legal officer at UAP Old Mutual Group, Uganda, as part of the Old Mutual Limited, OML Financial Services Group that offers a broad spectrum of financial services in over 17 countries. During this time, her key role was to provide in-house legal advisory services across the Uganda subsidiaries in various matters, including business transactions, product development, legal risk management, and litigation dispute resolution. Her work in the insurance sector enabled her gain practical exposure on legal management of succession matters, particularly in relation to insurance and provident fund-related benefits. Alison started off her professional career at British American Tobacco Uganda Limited as a secondee in-house advocate from law firm Sebalu and Ray Advocates and legal consultants. SNL, Sebalu and Ray is also Uganda's affiliate of DLA Piper and IFLR 100 Tier 1 rank finance in corporate law. It's just part of the description of DLA Piper, which is a very famous, one of the best law firms in the world. She is a member of the Uganda Law Society, East African Law Society, the Society of International Economic Law, the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments, and the Chartered Governance Institute UK. All right, so today we have two very highly qualified individuals to speak about the topic of the day, which is planning for the future, securing legacy wealth management for the family. If ever you've ever had any questions on that topic about legacy planning, thinking about the future, insurance, capital markets, and you are in the right place, and we have the right people. Very briefly, I am Samuel Sanya, and I am seated at the Capital Markets Authority. Right now, we have a poll question on the screens. If you would please help us to answer these very simple poll questions. We just have 7 questions. How old are you? These questions help us to improve these webinars. They also help the presenters to be more targeted in their presentation. So the second question is, which sector you're employed in, and whether you have any form of family investments. Do you have plans? I guess we all do. Do you want more knowledge? I think more is relevant. And have you been to training before? I think yes or no. And then who organized that? Was it your family, savings group? And once you're done with that, you can submit. You can just submit that to us, and we'll be happy to collect all these responses and then provide a definite report at the end. Allow me at this time to invite Gloria to start the presentations. If Gloria can just switch on her camera, and then Gloria and Alison can just guide us on how the presentation is going to be. I guess half the time will be Gloria and half the time will be Alison, but Gloria will guide how that will be. She's going to, both presentations will take roughly 40 minutes, so 20 minutes each, and then we will get into questions and answers. In case you have any questions during the presentation, share them in the chat or the Q&A. I will pick them up, and then I will, Gloria and Alison will provide us with answers. Gloria, over to you.
Thank you, Samuel, for that introduction. It was quite extensive. I will start off with a presentation, then later I'll hand over to Alison to take over. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, CMA. Thank you to the Uganda Institute of Banking and Financial Services for this platform. We are happy to be here. We are very pleased. So I'll go straight into the presentation. I don't know if you can see my screen. Okay. All right. So what we are going to talk about today is how do you plan for your legacy as a family? And the agenda for the presentation will be, I'll briefly talk about Greenthorse Capital, then I'll talk about your legacy as a family and the estate plan, then I'll go into estate planning tools that are available. I'll hand over to Alison at some point. So about Greenthorse Capital, we specialize in working with individuals and families, both in Uganda and in the diaspora to preserve their legacies through our various service offering. We provide wills. We work with individuals and families to have valid wills in place. We work with them to update their wills, to keep the wills custody, and basically to ensure that you have an updated will that will not be contested and that will preserve your legacy. We also help with trust formation. We shall be discussing more about trusts in this presentation, but it's a form of estate planning. We also support our customers to come up with powers of attorney, which is a tool for incapacity planning. So in the event that you're sick or you're not able to run your affairs, have you thought about who is going to be able to sign that check when you're not able to sign it? That's what a powers of attorney does. We also offer trustee services, which we shall be talking about later in this presentation. We also offer independent corporate execution or estate administration. So in the event in the event that you've done your will and you have passed on, you need someone trusted that is going to execute the instructions in the will. We also offer legacy valuation and advisory services, which include matters to do with business succession plans. As an entrepreneur who is going to take over your business, what is the value of your business? What is the plan if you're not here? So our value proposition as a business, we have professionals with diverse skill sets. Estate planning is a multi-disciplinary field. So we have professionals that are skilled in the tax, law, and finance fields. Also, because of our corporate structure, clients are assured of service for time to come. And then we help our customers save money and time. And then finally, neutrality, confidentiality, and professionalism, which are very important for estate planning. So I'll dig into your legacy. What is the definition of your legacy? The topic speaks into legacy wealth management for the family. But what do you think about when you hear the word legacy? So legacy, the commonest definition that we have is a gift by will, especially of money or other personal property. So this is really what most people think about. But legacy is also anything that can be left or handed down by a predecessor. Yeah. So what will your legacy be? So your legacy, as I mentioned, it can be property, which really which means being able to take care of your beneficiaries in the event of death, leaving an inheritance for your beneficiaries. It can also be in relation to your charitable goals. For example, ensuring that when you pass on, you have something to leave to causes that are dear to you. But how do you do that? So it could be religion, education. Some of us are passionate about sports, and we want to see them grow the cultures. So how do you ensure that you manage your legacy as a family? And then finally, your legacy can be the family values that you leave behind. But for purposes of this discussion and this presentation, we shall focus on the two, that is wealth and the charity goals. So in order for you to manage a legacy as a family intergenerationally, you have to put some estate planning tools into practice. And just some statistics when we are talking about estate planning in Uganda, which show the picture of the landscape, the estate planning landscape in Uganda. 94% of businesses are sole proprietorship. We know what that means. When you have a business that is a sole proprietorship, it means that you do not have structures. You really don't have everything. Your business starts and ends with you. So in the event that you're not around tomorrow, it will probably die with you. And therefore, all the value that you might have built up over the years will just expire if you're not here tomorrow. And that also speaks into the statistic of only 17% of indigenous businesses have been operating for at least 2 decades or more, which is a very small number given the fact that Uganda is a very entrepreneurial country. And then, so we also looked at a survey done by PwC that speaks into the fact, you would think that Ugandans who have formal businesses, we've left those that have sole proprietorships behind, but this survey was looking at Ugandans that have formal businesses, and only 26% have a succession plan, and only 20%, less than 20%, have a testament or will. So that just speaks into what the state of affairs is. And 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation, and about 90% by the third generation. So that just gives an overview of where we are at as a country. And I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, you have the tools to get started on your own estate plan to ensure that you're able to manage your wealth, your legacy wealth as a family. Yeah, so what is estate planning? Estate planning is the process of preparing for the management of one's estate upon death and during one's lifetime. So basically, it's very unlikely that you consume all the wealth that you have, that you have worked for in your lifetime. So it's estate planning really is about what you have built, how is it going to be managed in the event that you die. And the objectives of estate planning really are maintaining sufficient income and liquidity. That would, for example, if you have built up rental property, how do you ensure that there's sufficient income for generations, for your children? Yeah, even though they are young, what happens? Yeah. Also, estate planning is targeted towards preservation of family wealth. How do you conserve family land, family buildings, that communal property within the family for generations? So that is what estate planning is all about. Also, asset protection, stroke control. Estate planning can also be a way of ensuring that your assets are protected from creditors. If you're entering into a second marriage, if you're getting divorced, we shall be looking into the tools and how you can use them. Estate planning, as mentioned, also is also targeted at business succession. It speaks into how do you want your business to be run if you're not there? Do you want it to be sold? Do you want your members, your family members, to manage it? Are they interested? Do they have the expertise? Do they have the experience to manage it? Do you want to bring in technical partners? Yeah, so that also is a goal of estate planning. And also, finally, the final objective is achievement of charity goals and all other personal wishes. For example, if church is important to you, you could use an estate plan to ensure that maybe you donate land to a church, a cause that is really important to you. So, having spoken about the objectives of estate planning, what comprises of your estate? You might be thinking, but I don't have a very big estate. But when you actually review, everyone has something that they can bequeath. So your estate comprises of all property that is owned by you. It can be owned solely by you or jointly, joint ownership. So this includes real estate, which most of us can relate to. It also includes money, including cash held in banks and e-wallets. Cryptocurrencies becoming quite common. So that should also be included as part of your estate. We have intangible assets like the stocks, bonds, and other ownership rights. Life insurance policies also fall here. For most of us who work with reputable companies, big companies, we have the group personal accident policies that will probably pay an amount like that is about 3 times of your annual pay. So have you thought about how you want this to be treated when you pass on in the unfortunate event that you pass on? So there's also intellectual property, such as royalties, patents, and copyrights, and physical effects like cars, artwork, jewelry, furniture, clothes, and gadgets. So that's what your estate comprises of. So what are the estate planning tools that we have? We have the wills. So these are what everyone has really heard about. A will basically just outlines the rights that others will have over your property upon your demise. So basically it lists what are my assets, how do I want them distributed in the event that I pass on. And once you write a will, probate, it has to go through that court process to confirm its validity and start the whole process of distributing your property. Then the second tool that you can use to do estate planning that will help you conserve, that will help you with legacy wealth management, are the trusts. So a trust is a fiduciary relationship in which one party, known as a trustor, gives another party, the trustee, the right to hold title to property or assets for the benefit of a third party, the beneficiary. We shall be getting into the details of trusts later into this presentation, so I'll not go into them right now. Then foundations, really foundations are established to hold assets for a specific charitable purpose. So for example, if you want to, as I mentioned, maybe you want to contribute to, you want to donate land, a big piece of land to church. How do you ensure that this land is used for that purpose for generations to come? You do that through a foundation. And then other tools of estate planning include life insurance. Life insurance really pays a death benefit in the event of death. So it's a way of also of transferring some of your wealth to your beneficiaries. And then finally, we have powers of attorney. I think I remember there's a story about 3 or 4 years ago that came out. There's a certain gentleman who had to be rushed to a bank to sign a check. I felt it was a bit unfortunate that someone had to go through that on their deathbed. So this is also a powers of attorney is very, very important. It gives that continuity that even though I am not able to make decisions, I will have this person to make my decisions for me. So it's also a very important estate planning tool, because you do not want your family members, not to be able to access your accounts, so it helps with that. So I'll dive into wills, a deep dive into wills, which we all have heard of. So what is a will? A will is a legal document that declares one's wishes regarding the distribution of one's assets upon their demise. Like I mentioned briefly, really it's highlighting what are your assets, how do you want them distributed, and what do you include in a will. You would include beneficiaries. So those are the people that you want, persons or person that you want to receive your assets, to receive your estate. Then if you have any children that are below 18, you would appoint guardians for this in a will. A will also has details of your assets and their distribution, of course, to the beneficiaries. And then details of any trusts. You can create a trust as part of a will, and we shall be diving into trusts shortly. And then finally, as part of a will, you need to appoint executors who is going to ensure that the instructions that you have put in your will are followed, to the letter, in order for you to be able to pass on your wealth to your family, to your loved ones. What are the characteristics of a valid will? What should a valid will be? One, it should be done by someone who is of majority age. That means minors cannot do valid wills. Secondly, a will should be witnessed. So you need to have at least 2 witnesses to the will in order for it to be valid. Then you also have to be of sound mind. And finally, it should be done voluntarily. Yeah, so you should not be forced to do a will. It should be a decision that you make on your own without any coercion. Then, of course, because life changes, we are all going through life. You start single, you get children, you get married, sometimes divorce happens, your children grow, they get out of home. So a will is a dynamic document that changes according to life circumstances. And that means it needs to be updated. It should be updated as you go through the different stages of life. And we use codicils to update wills, but you can also choose to rewrite your will as and when. But having said that, there are limitations of wills. One is the probate process. Once you do a will, it has to go through court, which is the whole probate process, checking is it valid, yeah, so that it can then go through. So, and because of that process, wills are not private. So the contents of the will will be public. Everyone will know your business, which might be disadvantageous to some people. Then also wills focus on only distribution, and which might not meet objectives in complex estates. For what happens with wills is that you only be able to distribute. You won't have a say in how management. So if you're bequeathing your land to Gloria, for example, she could sell that land tomorrow. Yeah, so that is one of the disadvantages of wills. You do not have a say on what happens after. Then finally, there are taxes that have to be paid to perfect title. So once you've inherited a piece of land through a will, you have to incur some taxes to change the ownership, perfect the title and everything, which is really a loss of money, of estate value, as you're paying out that value, that money to perfect the titles. For wills, estate planning that is targeted towards multiple generations of ownership is not simply doing a will. So one of the misconceptions that we've seen here is that, oh, once I have a will, I'm assured that my wealth will last 3 generations. No, estate planning is not a one-size-fits-all. It requires careful introspection and advice from professionals to use the best tool for you. So whether you use a will, whether you use a trust or whatever, it really requires that you review your own affairs, to see what is the best tool for you. So I will now hand over to Alison to take us through the next part of the presentation. Alison, over to you.
Thank you, Gloria, and good afternoon to everyone on the call, and good afternoon to you, Samuel. Thank you for that introduction. I'm delighted to be having this conversation this afternoon regarding a very important and yet slightly sensitive topic. Just to give a bit of context, looking at the Uganda scenario, but also speaking generally, you really cannot talk about wealth management without talking about legacy and estate planning and management. I know a lot of focus has been placed on wealth creation. So how do we generate income so that we can sustain our lives, sustain our lifestyle, support our family members? How do we save for a rainy day and invest that money so that it can multiply? But there is the reality of our human immortality, and we need to appreciate the mechanisms and apply the mechanisms that are in place to preserve the wealth that we have created during our lifetime for posterity, so that it can be applied to benefit those close to us, our loved ones, our family members, and the like, meaningfully applied. And I think over time we've been disadvantaged from a social-cultural point of view. As some of these discussions are taboo, you can imagine if you had a discussion with your elder, your parent, and a random discussion saying, so what plans do you have for property XYZ? The immediate thought in someone's mind is you wish them dead, or are they about to die? But I think one of the things that came to the fore, especially with the global health crisis, is that some of these conversations need to be held. We need to plan because it is a reality that we need to address, and rather than wait for the last moment or bury our heads in the sand, it's important that we are armed with the knowledge, and it's clear in our minds what are the available tools, so that some of these issues that could be avoided, and the mental strain, the chaos that comes with poor estate planning and management can be avoided. I think most of you will recall one of the stories that happened earlier on. I think it was either earlier on this year or late last year, when we had a prominent person die, a former, still a practicing lawyer, Mr. Kasango, Bob Kasango. And most of us recall the media stories regarding the chaos that surrounded his burial, and the situation between those that were close to him. So, like Gloria mentioned, sometimes legacy preservation is even beyond wealth, but it also includes the name, it also includes your personal wishes. And when we have some of these planning tools in place, it saves quite a lot, both in terms of cost, but also in terms of allowing our loved ones to have that peace of mind as some of these issues are being addressed. So to Gloria's point, as we are planning, as we are carrying out our wealth planning and management, we do need to incorporate legacy planning. But again, like she mentioned, there has to be that introspection on what is the appropriate tool. Is it a trust? Is it a will? Is it a combination of both? And the answer really depends on how well you've been able to assess those assets that are comprised in your estate, and also looking at your personal circumstances in terms of what rights and obligations attached to those assets. What is your cultural setting? A lot of these things are unique to each individual. Do you foresee that within your own personal context, there are cultural and social norms that you ordinarily expect your family to apply? And having that in mind, how have you provided for that in the legacy planning tool that you have selected? It does not make sense, for instance, to have a will that talks about a particular personal wish that you know is going to be a point of conflict, taking into consideration your personal, social, economic, or cultural setting. And at that point, you need to ask yourself, what other tool can I use to make sure that this asset that is forming part of my estate, it is adequately provided for when I'm not here? So to the point of moving on to the issue of how we can utilize trust as such a tool. First of all, I know a lot of us associate trusts with corporate, the corporate trusts, the corporate trustees that are ordinarily within the framework of perhaps collective investment schemes and unit trusts. But simply put, a trust is creating that fiduciary responsibility between yourself, who is creating the trust, usually known as a truster, and a trustee, who is usually someone you feel is competent and trustworthy to actually hold that property or that asset for the benefit of a third party. Of course, the unique thing about the trust relationship is that whereas the trustee holds the property or that asset, they are merely holding it only in name. The ownership does not transfer, but the expectation is that they would treat it as if it were their own asset, and specifically in a manner that shows that whatever they did, it was in the best interest of the beneficiary for who they actually hold that trust. So we have two types of trust, and this is really in the context of estate planning. Outside estate planning, there are other types of trusts, but in the context of estate planning, we have two types of trust. That is the testamentary trust, and this type of trust is something that is a trust that is created in a will. So one of the provisions that you would put in the will is, upon my death, this trust is to be created, and it will comprise asset XYZ, and I designate trustee XYZ as the first trustee. And at that point in time, it would then be the responsibility of those designated trustees to operationalize that trust that has been created in the will. Then we also have a living trust, which is created while the truster is still alive. This is usually, or it is created by way of trust deed, and it is more elaborate in terms of the trustee's responsibilities, investment expectation, utilization of the assets or application of the assets, the specified beneficiaries and the like. So those are the two types of trust we'll be looking at under estate planning. Gloria, if you could go to the next slide. And in terms of the key ingredients, you're looking at making sure you have a trust property that can actually be ring-fenced or transferred to a trust. So you need to ascertain that those properties that have encumbrances and are ordinarily not suited for that transfer. So if there is any perfecting that needs to be done before that, it needs to be done so that the assets, the trust assets, can be adequately ring-fenced in a trust. Obviously, you need the truster, who would in that instance be the person that is creating the trust, the trustees, and we shall speak a little bit about who is a good trustee. And then you need clarity on who are the beneficiaries, who do you intend that trust to benefit. You recall Gloria talked about the difference between a will and trust. In this instance, you're looking at long-term provision for beneficiaries beyond merely distribution of property. And in most cases, you'll find that there are those categories of people, maybe minors, persons probably who are incapable of taking care of particular assets, maybe for reasons of mental health or whatever reason. So it may not make sense to assign or distribute property to those particular people. And those are the categories perhaps that would be better suited for a trust arrangement as an estate planning tool. Moving on. Yes, the issue of trustees. So how do you know who to select as a trustee? It's easier when you're talking about the corporate trusts that most of us have probably interfaced with. There's a regulatory framework at UBRA for getting licensed. But in this context, the primary regulatory framework is the Trustees Act that applies, and common law principles that establish that fiduciary responsibility between a truster and a trustee and the beneficiary. So in terms of duties, these two legal frameworks look at mainly the issue of fiduciary responsibility, and simply put, that commitment to ensure that you act in the best interest of others. So as you're looking to appoint a trustee, or for some of us, if you are approached to act as a trustee, that should be the key starting point. Is this person able to guarantee that they will act in the best interest of the beneficiaries that you envisage? Or if you are being approached, are you able to guarantee that at all times you will act in the best interest of the beneficiary for whom the trust has been created? The second issue is the issue of personal liability. So these regulatory frameworks have basically said, as a trustee, any action that you undertake with respect to the property, you must demonstrate that you are acting in the best interest. And in the event that you're not able to demonstrate that you are acting in the best interest, then there's the issue of personal liability that comes in. Because those actions that you undertake, whether it comes to investment or distribution, disposal of trust assets, you will be held accountable in your personal capacity as an individual. The frameworks have also distinguished the relationship of trustee-truster with from other relationships, the relationship of agency, contract, executor, or administrator. Specifically, of course, for executor and administrator, what these two people are doing is identifying the assets that form part of the estate, collecting them, creating an inventory, and then distributing to those beneficiaries that have been designated either by will for an executor or by courts of law for an administrator. And that is it. Once the distribution is done, then the final act is to again file a distribution report with court and close that matter. But trusts are more long-lived, and once you create a trust, then you have essentially ring-fenced that asset to the exclusion of all others, including yourself, the truster, and all other actions that are taken with respect to that asset need to reflect best interests of the beneficiary. So that is one of the other legal considerations that arise when looking at a trust and duties of a trustee. So in instances where you have a living trust and the truster is trying to act in a manner, yes, it was your property, you ring-fenced it, but as you're proposing a particular action, is it in the best interest of the beneficiary? That is an area that one has to consider. And then from a practical perspective, of course, the issue of capacity. As a trustee, you should be in position to make sound investment decisions. You need to have a good grasp of administration of a trust in terms of asset management, property management, record keeping, and a good grasp of the distribution, suitable distribution and allocation of those trust assets. So as someone who is looking to appoint a trustee, that should be the capacity or the capability of the person that you are selecting needs to be critical. Sometimes there is a conflict because whereas you want to keep such matters closer to home, you also need to consider the capability of the persons that you are appointing and the extent to which they'll be able to safeguard the beneficiary's interests. And one of the best practices that is recommended is to include at least an independent trustee, so that in terms of decision making, there is that objectivity that can come through when dealing with matters of investment and administration. Moving on to the next. Yes, so just to recap, in terms of your checklist, if you're creating a trust, we talked about the property, the beneficiary. You need to be able to articulate the terms of access, whether of the income that is generated from the trust property or from the actual assets themselves. Are you designated at certain point T when, say, maybe the beneficiaries can have full access, maybe when they come of age? Are you putting certain prohibitive requirements for cessation of benefit from a particular from a trust, so that you keep the beneficiaries aligned with your wishes? And remember, this is you're long gone at this point in time, so thinking ahead is critical. I talked about trustee competence, of course, provisions for property, asset management and investment, and of course, then the consent and the signature of the trustees is important, because as you select those trustees, they have to commit to become trustees. It's easier when you're dealing with a living trust because they do have to sign off the trust deed. But when you're dealing with a testamentary trust where you're designating the trustees, there has to be that consent obtained from them, so that one, they are aware that you have designated them by way of will, and two, they have consented to act as trustees. If you can move to the next slide. So yes, just to wrap up in terms of the key considerations for the trust, look at the kind of assets you have within your estate, and what tool is appropriate, taking into consideration the type of assets and the different obligations that attach to those assets. Look at the beneficiaries that you're looking to provide for, that will give you some guidance on whether or not you need to incorporate a trust as a tool in your estate planning. And then importantly, look at your personal circumstances from a social, economic, cultural context to see whether the tool is appropriate, but also to see what kind of special provisions you need to incorporate in the trust formation documents, so that you have a holistic legacy planning, legacy plan for your wealth. I'll stop there and hand back to you, Gloria.
Thank you, Alison. I think just to wrap up, we'll just give different scenarios based on what can you use if depending on your circumstance. If it's a simple estate where the goal is just distribution of property, you make use of a will. If you have minors, if you passed on now and you have minors, they might not be able to manage that that, their inheritance. So you could use a testamentary trust, which Alison has talked about. If you have family property, which is communally owned, you probably all live in the city, but you have that, those ancestral burial grounds that you want to preserve in the family for generations. You could consider a trust. Yeah. If you have marital property versus inherited property, so maybe you're a lady, you had some property that you inherited, you might want to ring fence that in a trust in order to, for it to be preserved for the benefit of your side of the family, for example. And then, of course, greater control. If you want greater control over the management of your assets, even after death, a trust could be more beneficial to you. Ring fencing property, as Alison has said, if you have debts and you don't want your property to be affected by your debts, or by a second marriage, by a divorce, you could consider putting that particular property in a trust. Then you also need to think about flexibility. Some trusts can be revocable versus irrevocable. So if you want some flexibility, a will, obviously you won't be here to change a will, but a trust, you can build some flexibility in that. So I'll now hand over to Samuel in case of any questions, comments, additions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you so much, Gloria. We have now come to the Q&A section. You're free to ask. I have a few questions that I've been thinking about that I'm going to ask Gloria and Alison. Before that, on our screens is the results of the poll. Age, most of us are between 30 and 50. We're in the private sector, and we have some form of family investment, which is a good thing. It's almost an even split, yes and no. I think there could be another third option for not knowing. Do you have any plans to secure your family? Almost everyone says yes. A few say no. Do you want more knowledge? Most say yes. And have you been to an investment talk before? Many say yes. I hope it was on this series of webinars. And then most of these talks have been organized by employers and the UIBFS. So we thank you very much, the Uganda Institute of Banking and Financial Services. We now come to the question time. And I have some 3 questions, which Gloria or Alison could answer. The first one is about the timing. Most of us in Uganda think mostly about our life now, and many Ugandans are struggling to make ends meet today. So we do not give much thought to the time after we're here. And not everyone, I think, can say that they inherited a very large fortune of money. However, what we are trying to do with this series of webinars, especially with this one today, is to ensure we break that cycle and we begin to have a larger portion of inheritance that we leave to our dependents going forward to really transform this country and our families. So the first question really is about what time should someone consider having a will done or a trust done? What's the time that you should maybe speak to a company like Brinthos to begin that process of coming up with a will or a trust or these various instruments that exist. The second question is really about the estate. When someone is talking about an estate, what can go into this estate? Do we already have, many people might imagine they don't have an estate, and yet there could be things that you can add to this estate. So I'm assuming you can have shares can be passed over, in your will. Maybe it may not be just physical property. There was talk about cryptocurrencies. I guess that comes with its own challenges because it has keys and some cyber protections. But if you could just give us some of the common things that people add into this estate, and perhaps those that don't have one could begin to think about adding some of these things to what would be an estate. And then finally, maybe just very last two final issues is life insurance. Could you please help us with what I know that Gloria and Alison have been at UAP, and perhaps you could help us with how much is usually paid in premiums. Can you perhaps have a plan of doing this over 5 years, over 10 years, and then have that secured as your part of your estate, or is this something that you would have to do indefinitely? If you could just shed some more light on life insurance and what it looks like. Yeah, so if we could just have some answers for those three. And I can see that there may be, there's a comment. Christine says, thank you, Alison, Gloria, and Sam. This has been so informative. Thank you very much, Christine. Can we just have those responses, Gloria and Alison? Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. I'll answer, and in case there's anything I've left out, Alison will fill in the gaps. So I'll start with the question on what forms part of the estate. This was one of the slides we had. So your estate is really the property that you own, either jointly or solely by yourself. So it can include real estate. We are currently having digital assets that are coming in. So you also need to think of what will happen to your social media accounts, your Google, the pictures you've saved on Google Drive, your email accounts, cryptocurrency, those wallets, the crypto wallets and stuff, what will happen to them? Those are your digital assets. And then, money, that's, the one you have in banks, what will happen to it? Intangible assets like the stocks, the bonds, and other ownership rights. If you're part of a partnership, it's part of your estate. Then intellectual property like royalties, patents, copyrights, any websites that you own, those are the digital assets. Physical effects like the cars, your artwork, your jewelry, your furniture, your clothes, your gadgets. That is your estate. I am very sure that all of us have at least some of that. Then obviously the insurance policies. And then the other question was, when should I consider having a will? You should consider having a will or an estate plan in place as long as you're an adult that has an estate, that has property that you can bequeath. So long as you're an adult, you have property, whether you're single, whether you have children, you should have a will or estate plan. Then the other question on life insurance. So the life insurance that most Ugandans use is when you have the savings. That it has a savings component. So you're contributing to an insurance policy that has both a life an insurance policy and also a risk element. So the risk cover in a life insurance policy really states that if you pass on within this time, we are going to pay you this amount of time, this amount of money. So how life insurance can fit into your estate plan? Maybe let's just give an example. Gloria has just started working. She has maybe 2 young children. The culture here would be maybe to start to construct houses for all those for those 2 children. But maybe Gloria is constrained. She does not have money to start, those are very big projects. So what she could do, she could open up a life insurance policy so that in the event that she passes on, her beneficiaries receive some money, so she's able to pass on some wealth to her beneficiaries in the event that she passes on. So that is how life insurance fits in. Alison, I'll hand over to you in case there's something else that you would want to add on. Alison?
Yes, please. Sorry about that. I had dropped off a bit. Can you say that again?
If there's anything that you'd want to add on the answers that I've just given.
Not materially, maybe just to make 2 comments. One on issue of NSS benefits.
Hello, Alison, you're dropping.
I guess Alison.
That is also.
Okay. Alison has dropped off. Unfortunately, we can't get what she's saying. But there's another question from Jaswa, and I think it's been partly answered. He's been talking about the best stage, the best time to write a will, Gloria, do you want to give an age, a particular age, when someone should start writing a will?
No, I can't give an age, Samuel, because so long as you're an adult with assets, it's really the best time. There's nothing like the best time or the best age. So long as you're an adult with with property, and which might fall into contention in the event that you pass on, you need to have a will.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Alison, if you could just give us your thoughts and final word.
Yes, just to end with the issue of alignment with those separate documents that provide for assets. If you have an insurance policy, your NSSF, your bank account where you have an opportunity to designate a beneficiary, it's important that these beneficiaries are aligned in your will so that it speaks the same language. Then for the issue of what age, I mean, there's never any, there's no time.
Okay, we seem to have lost Alison. Gloria, if you could give us your closing remarks, your summation of the topic, and closing remarks, Gloria?
Yeah, so I think the final comments for me are that estate planning is very, very important. And there's a tendency for us as Ugandans to focus more on amassing wealth without thinking about how am I going to pass on this wealth through a will, through a trust, through the different, vehicles that are available. So I challenge all of us today on this call to just think through our estate and what would happen that you passed on. You wouldn't, and what kind of will, and your beneficiaries. Yeah, that is it.
Thank you very much, Gloria. And we also wish to thank Alison, who's just dropped off. We have an exit poll. If you can just help us to fill it in. It's a very short one. It takes a very short time. How do you rate this webinar? I think it was a very good one. And I personally liked every part of it. When can you use this information? I think I can begin now. And I think we had very good speakers. So if you can just fill that in. We would also like to thank our partners and sponsors. Once again, Housing Finance Bank, Equity Bank Uganda, Finance Trust Bank, DFCU Bank, Citibank Uganda, KCB, Financial Intelligence Authority, Absa Bank, Mercantile Credit Bank, Exim Bank Uganda, Finca Uganda, NCBA Uganda, Yuga Ford, Microfinance Limited, BRAC Bank Uganda, Bank of Africa, Uganda, DTB Bank, ABC Capital Bank, Bank of Baroda, Uganda, Tropical Bank, and Cairo Bank, Uganda. Wherever you come across our partners, make sure to support them. We also thank you. We also wish to thank our stakeholders, the Capital Markets Authority, CFA East Africa Society, Uganda Retirement Benefits Authority, Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, and the Uganda Insurance Association that we are collaborating with to deliver these financial literacy awareness webinars. We have the poll numbers are in, and they're looking very good. Thank you very much, Gloria and Alison, for an excellent delivery. Next is a webinar. We have the next webinar is on 6th December at 1 p.m. under the topic Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing, a practical approach to detection and prevention. Don't fall a victim to fraud and terrorism financing. Get to know what's happening, get to know how to keep safe from this. It will be delivered by, that webinar will be delivered by Esther Aikiriza Kajira, Manager Strategic Analysis and Statistics, and Acting Head of Communications at the Financial Intelligence Authority, FIA. Don't miss it. We thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Gloria, and thank you, Alison. Special thanks to the Uganda Institute of Banking and Financial Services for putting this together. And from the CMA and everyone on the organizing team, we thank you for joining us. Have a very good rest of your lunch if you haven't yet had that, and see you again on 6th Monday at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith would be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper my faith would be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. And take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit,